Hi, my name is Alessandro Del Sole, and today I'm going to show you how you can start migrating a Microsoft Access database to Visual Studio LightSwitch passing through Microsoft SQL Server. Before we start, you need to download a free tool from Microsoft called Microsoft SQL Server Migration Assistant. There is a specific edition for Microsoft Access, so you can easily find the tool by searching on Bing, and then you can download it for free. Once you have downloaded the tool, and once you run the tool that you can see now in the video, the first thing you can do is starting the migration wizard. Simply click next on the welcome dialog. Then you have to specify a project name and the target edition of Microsoft SQL Server. You can leave unchanged the default selection on SQL Server 2008, but you can also choose a different edition. Let's go ahead. And at this point, you need to specify the database, the Access database that you want to migrate. For this example, I'm using the Northwind database for Microsoft Access. So let's click at Databases. Let's click the Northwind database, and then let's go ahead. At this point, I need to specify all the database objects that I want to be involved in the migration process. So tables and queries. Okay. So at this point, I need to specify the SQL Server instance that will receive my new database and the database name. So I'm leaving unchanged the default selection on the current instance of SQL Server Express on my machine, and I'm specifying a new name for the Northwind database, such as Northwind from Access. Let's go ahead. The wizard is informing that the database does not exist, so it's asking my confirmation before creating a new one. So let's click yes. We just have to wait some seconds while the tool is loading the database objects. We do not want linked tables to the existing Access database, so we can go ahead. And at this point, we can wait for the migration process to go on. At this point, the tool is asking me if I want to synchronize some information, and I can expand to see what I'm going to synchronize. I can leave unchanged the default selection and click OK. So the loaded objects are being converted into SQL Server counterpart objects on the new database. And I'm OK. So I have successfully migrated my Access database to Microsoft SQL Server 2008. So I can close the tool, and it's time to go to Microsoft LightSwitch. So let's create a new project. Let's select LightSwitch. Let's create a new Visual Basic LightSwitch application and create a new project called Northwind Migration. Okay, so at this point, we will need to specify the data connection to the new database migrated from Microsoft Access to Microsoft SQL Server. So let's click here to connect to an external data source, the database, Microsoft SQL Server. Let's specify the instance of SQL Server that contains the new database. Let's specify the database name. Okay, at this point we can select the database objects that we want to include in our LightSwitch application. So for example, the typical tables such as customers and orders. And as you can see, you can also select some views. So what is important to underline here is that the SQL Server Migration Assistant converted the queries from Microsoft Access into views in Microsoft SQL Server. So for example, you might want to select the 10 most expensive products query, which has been mapped into a SQL Server view. So let's click Finish, and we just wait that LightSwitch creates new entities for each database object. It is normal that a view does not contain a primary key, and so we can leave the job of creating a new primary key to LightSwitch. So let's click Continue. So cool, as you can see, Visual Studio LightSwitch has been able of generating entities based on the new database. And as you can see, there is also the relationship with the order entity. And there is all data mapping for the entity properties the appropriate way. By the way, we can still change the mapping with the other data types, such as date instead of date time, and for instance, money instead of decimal. We can now create some screens. You might want to create a search screen for the view. And you can easily create a new list and detail screen for the customers and orders relationship, like this. Okay, so we can simply run the application. Let me move the application window into the view. Okay. So cool, the application has been able of showing the data coming from a SQL Server view that has been generated after the migration from a Microsoft Access database. Also, we can move to the customer list detail screen that will display the list of customers on the left, the details of the customer on the right, and then the list of the orders related to the customer. This has been reached by migrating a Microsoft Access database to SQL Server and later importing the SQL Server database into Microsoft LightSwitch. You can then easily implement your validation rules and all the rest of your business logic. Okay, thank you for taking your time in watching this video.